Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. I am your host, Jimmy Church, and tonight, well, this is Fade to Black, by the way. Tonight, Whitley Strieber joins us, and Whitley is here to talk about his new #1 best-selling book. It is called Them. He's live from the United Kingdom tonight. Normally, he's right down the street from me here. I miss him dearly already, and he's live from England. And here's the thing. I'm not going to go through a long bio tonight with Whitley. No, I'm going to get straight to the show. But the facts are the facts. His website, unknowncountry.com, is among the largest in the world dealing with paranormal phenomena. And his podcast, Dreamland, has produced weekly for over 20 years. And that is all I have to say. I'm just going to go straight to it. Say, Whitley, good morning, young man. How are you?
Good morning. It's good to be here. Good morning for me. It's 3:00 in the morning here or something.
Yeah.
Very quiet.
Yeah, this is the thing. I remember you telling me once many years ago, you said, Jimmy, I get up at 3 a.m. to meditate every night.
I do.
I am good. Well, now tonight you're going to have to stick to that. Exactly. And, but congratulations. The book is #1. It's got to make you feel pretty good.
Yeah, it's people are liking the book. It's a lot of hard work went into that. It's 2 years of work and mucho trouble. It was a hard book to write on a lot of different levels, but I'm glad there's a response because, yeah.
Well, I kind of want to jump in though and say that you and I talk a lot. And it seemed that, and we talk and we hang out in those things, but every time that I talk to you lately over the last couple of years, Jimmy, honestly, man, I got to get back to work. I got to get back to work. I got to get back to writing. I got to get.
That was it. Yeah.
Your passion about this has been very apparent over the last 2 years, and it's the subject of the book too, as well, which we're going to be discussing tonight. But here's the thing. The foreword is Jacques Vallée. How did that happen? And
well,
can you discuss that?
Yeah. The first thing that I sent the book to Mitch Horace, Jacques Vallée, Diana Pasulka, Jeff Kripal, John Alexander, and a number of other people, Colm Kelleher, Hal Puthoff, and quite a few. And I got back, I asked for blurbs. I didn't ask anybody for anything else. I got back from Mitch Horace 2 days later. I mean, he devoured the book in a couple days and wrote a preface to it saying it was the most important book on the subject since Jacques Vallée's Passport to Magonia. And then about a week later, Jacques himself comes back with a foreword, essentially saying that the book is essential reading because, especially for policymakers, because it talks a lot about the need to develop coherent policy and also whatever is here policy towards us is, because they do have policies. They have consistent policies, and if you look carefully into this record, You will find those policies. So those are, and then Jeff Kripal says, Whitley, I've got to write an afterword, because Jeff went through with me the trouble that came because of this book, because of some things I had written before they were published. They caused a major kerfluffle, and my apartment was broken into. A lot of things happened. Anyway, we'll get into that. But so he wrote an afterword, and then all of the others, George Knapp, I think I mentioned. No, I didn't. I mentioned him. Everyone else wrote blurbs, so it's got a lot of support. A lot of support.
You, I want to talk about Mitch Horace for a second. Mitch and them are gonna get going here, but Mitch is somebody that I have the greatest respect for because of his. Well, first off, he's just an all-around nice guy, right? But he's very smart, and his
Very smart.
yeah, his foundation is solid. He's just got so much research and so much knowledge, right? And then there's the literary side of him too as well. He's just an extraordinarily intelligent person. And so for him to come back and mention to you, comparing your work, this latest work, to Jacques Vallée, that hits home. I mean, that's coming from
Yeah,
Mitch.
that was pretty impressive. I was very grateful for that, I have to tell you. And then the thing is that he says in the preface, he mentions Jacques' book, and then the forward is from Jacques, and they didn't have any idea that either of them was writing anything.
Is that sneaky?
I don't know. It just fell together that way.
Or wait, did you meditate? Did you manifest that? Right? Did you reach out to the universe and get?
I just tried to, get some notice and some support for my book, and it worked very well, as it turned out.
You were okay. I want to talk about the issues at your house for a second, if you don't mind, and you can go as far as you want to go. But when everything started to go down, you had called me and we talked, and you had sent me some videos. Okay, that's all I'm going to say, right?
Yeah.
So I'm getting this update nearly in real time, and we talked through that. Later that week, or it was shortly after that, it was days, but you came out to my house for dinner.
Right.
And I gave you some grief. I said, Whitley, we were sitting out. Now, I feel kind of bad about it, but we're sitting out. We had a bunch of people that were having a great time, and you were watching the cameras on your house, on your phone.
Right. That's right. I sure was.
Yeah. And I go, Whitley, focus. We're talking to you. And at that time, to have that kind of stuff go down, it's an intrusion into your space.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
what did that?
I can watch the cameras right now from here.
I know you can. You probably are, but
not at the moment.
What was you're my friend, and I was watching. I saw your demeanor change over that month or so when all of this was going down. How did you deal with it? Because you have to reach down inside of yourself and get through it. Nobody's going to get through it for you, but you.
Well, I focused on the fact that the book would be published. It would be written and it would be published. That was my focus. And I had the first thing that happened was that a series of explosions around the house, which those were probably the videos I showed you, because they were all picked up on video. And then the next thing was the break-in, which it was strange because, they didn't need to do it. They didn't need to. There was no sign of a break-in when I came home from this to give the listeners. Or are you on video now? Are we on video? Is this?
Yeah, we are. We are.
Oh, okay, good. So the viewers or listeners, an idea. I had gone out to exercise, as I do most mornings, and it was about 8 o'clock. I came in, and I noticed immediately as I walked into the bedroom that all my drawers were open, and I thought, "Holy God!" And there's no sign of any damage to the door of any kind. It was just locked as normal. And I thought, somebody's been in here. And, I called the cops, but there was nothing to do because, I could have filed a police report, but there was no evidence of anything except some open drawers. There was nothing. There was nothing. So I kind of thought, maybe I better increase my security here, because I did have the cameras, but the thing that troubled me, and it didn't trouble me right away, but it troubled me when I really thought about it a few hours later, that the router had been offline that morning for the first time in, years. Something had happened the day before, and I had gotten a notification that there was another computer trying to get onto my network. And I thought to myself at the time, no one should even be able to see this network, let alone get onto it. So maybe I need a more secure router. So I turned the router off that night and ordered a new router. No, it must have been, it was the day before. It was afternoon before that it happened, because I ordered a new router in time for it to come from Amazon overnight, and it was due there the next day, and the day the break-in happened. So the break-in happened on the only day that the router wasn't turned on in years, and that creeped me out. When I really thought about it, I thought, what could be going on here? Because I then thought, well, whoever it was they were responsible for that intrusion attempt in the first place. Somebody with a lot of computer skill. So why in the world would they come in here and open drawers? I mean, it's just pointless. And, I ordered some new cameras and additional cameras. I've now got 2 interlocking systems in the house. It's very, very secure.
Do you remember you called me? I just want to share this with everybody because it's funny now. But Whitley calls me.
It's not to me, not yet. I'm working on it. Go ahead.
Right. Whitley calls me and he goes, "Jimmy, I got a question to ask you." I said, "What's up?" And he goes, "What kind of security system do you have? What can you recommend?" I was like, "What are you asking me?" And that's when you said, I need to seriously upgrade. And the tone in your voice, you don't call up a friend and ask, what kind of security system do you have, unless there's a reason, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I called you, and I got a lot of help also from Jim Semivan, the CIA guy, because when he was in operations, he was security was one of his areas of expertise, and so he advised me. One of the things that had happened was that after this occurred, I got a electronic door lock, and someone came and looked over the system, and that their image showed up on the electronic lock's camera, and as well as a video of them walking up and looking around. And
He looks right in the camera too. And,
Yeah,
and
you've seen it. Yeah, he looks right in the camera.
Whitley, he goes right. I was like, what?
He's looking over the system. He's
Yeah,
looking over everything.
yeah. And
And
he looked. Can I say he looked military? He looked special ops to me.
he
I'm
did
sure
to a lot of people. And
Yeah.
Jim Semivan said he looked at the video very carefully, and he said he is examining every aspect of your security system, including the strength of your door. And he is a thief or something worse. And he's never come back. In fact, no one ever comes to my door except my maid. I'm very careful about my address. I don't give it out.
Right.
But I had all these explosions, which would happen when I was meditating, and that had been disturbing. And I hadn't really. The first one happened the previous January, and I thought, it's kids playing with firecrackers. Maybe some of the neighborhood kids know I meditate, because some people that they know who I am, live right around there. Maybe they're giving me a hard time, or maybe just kids throwing around firecrackers. It was about 2 or 3 weeks after New Year's, so I figured, forget about it. It's not important. Then this incredible explosion occurred, which startled people all over the neighborhood, and the neighborhood app was full of people saying, "What blew up? What was it?" And I figured out from the number of reports that it had been heard over at least a square mile. And however, the main flash and sparking of it seemed to be right in front of my apartment, and it had really been loud. And I thought, this is getting serious. This is not a toy. This is not a skyrocket or a firecracker. This was something big. And I began to think, maybe I ought to get out of here. Maybe I'm in trouble here, because this isn't some kid playing around with fireworks. Something else. And then a few months later, the break-in takes place, and I'm working on a book, and I'm trying to figure out what happened, what was wrong, and who was doing it. Well, I ended up I haven't figured out who was doing it. I don't know. I don't know. They were people, though. I don't think it was little grays or anything like that. I think it was people who are, and it suggests to me there are people who are connected to this thing in some ways that most of us are not, because why would they single me out otherwise? I did figure out why. And it was basically because I was talking too much and writing too much about things that are sensitive to these beings that I think of as the visitors, things they don't want out. And these are not things that you and I would consider, secrets, revelations. They're vulnerabilities. And I'm not going to talk about them anymore, because, they obviously were frightened. They were scared by by my verbal diarrhea, and not so much on shows, but to friends, and you being one of them. And but it's nothing that someone would say, "Oh, we got to know that."
Right.
It's just that there are vulnerabilities. There are, and so I don't talk about that anymore. And
did you have some of this in the book originally?
Yeah.
And it was removed?
I removed it. I removed everything that I thought could be troubling, but nothing that was important. because the important stuff is all still there,
Mhm.
including in the chapter about what happened to me. You get everything you need to know in that chapter.
Mhm.
Because my job here is not keeping secrets. It's not about keeping secrets. It's the opposite. I'm the guy who's supposed to tell things, and I stumbled onto some very sensitive things and paid the price. And fortunately, I figured it out, and now we're copacetic. We're good.
Um,
And
can
yeah, go ahead.
when the break-in happened, your electronics were there. You're out working out.
Yeah.
Was anything accessed on your computer, and was the book maybe downloaded?
Well, the book wasn't. The book was just in mid writing, and I have the book. When I save to so many different places at the same time that there's no way to get rid of it.
No, but
In other words,
they could have read. They could have read what
well,
you're writing about.
what developed the next Saturday. This was a Thursday that break-in happened.
Mm-hmm.
Then on Saturday, I was sitting in the park with one of my grandkids, and all of a sudden, this feeling came over me that I needed to look at the website. And I just had my phone, and I thought, what are you thinking about the website for? It's a beautiful morning. Enjoy your grandchild, for goodness sakes. And but I opened my phone and went to the back end of the website. And just as I went to the back end of the website, someone came in with one of the admin usernames and started attempts started flashing past very quickly. And they were using a brute forcing program to try to find the password. And so I got a hold of the webmaster. I said, this is happening. And he said, well, let's go on to the security system and close down his IP address. And so we did that. Seconds later, he came back from another IP address, then another. And we followed him all over the world from IP address to IP address. They were flying. And finally, it stopped. And from the back end, in other words, with no emails or anything like that, or no vocal, the webmaster gave me a new admin username and password, and we shut down all of the others and gave everyone who has back-end access new usernames and passwords. And I got home, and the first thing I wanted to do was open my computer and look at the website from the front end to be sure everything was still in good shape, because I couldn't be absolutely sure, although he thought it was fine. And the second I entered the website, they had my password and my new admin. And they were going to town, wrecking the bookstore and starting to wreck all the different parts of the website they could. And we got rid of them pretty quickly. But it was amazing. In fact, when they had come into the apartment, they'd opened the drawers as a diversion and put a keylogger on the computer, which we later found. Now, here's a question. Why bother to open the drawers? There was no other sign that they'd even entered the apartment. And they could have put the keylogger on without my even knowing it. See what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And with no tip-off whatsoever, because this wasn't about getting into my website, wrecking my website. It was about intimidating me. And it got worse, because all of a sudden, someone in England who has been on the website, is a fan and a dear friend, started to say they were getting all of their old emails from months ago that they sent to people at random were pouring back onto their computer, and they didn't understand where they were coming from. Then the back end of the website, began to show their email address as one of the admins, suggesting that they were the culprits when they weren't. And this is a characteristic of this level of this. They will always go after people to try to drive a wedge between people you work with and people you love. That is a characteristic of it. So that's like a signature. And I thought to myself, it's them. They're doing this, and they're mad at me. And I'm not going to say too much more here because I don't want them to get mad at me again.
No, I don't want that. I don't want that either. But it must have felt like driving around, in the middle of the apocalypse, right? Like you're the last man standing in a black and white sepia tone dreamscape. Oh, I just said the name of your in a dreamland, right? With no way out. It must have been a pretty helpless feeling.
It was awful.
Yeah.
And it still is, frankly. And I started leaving the country as often as possible.
So back to the book, because that's when this happened. We were, and I forget. I remember. I was inviting you over for dinner, and you said,
right.
"No, church. I'm blowing this popsicle stand." And
right.
I said, "What's going on?" You said, "Man, I gotta finish this book." And so I'm just going to leave the country for a few months, and I'm just going to. This book is too important, and I need to get out of here. And you did. It was like 2 days later. You flew out of the country.
I found some friends who've been on my website for years and are good friends, and so I wrote the book basically in their kitchen with the kids running around, rock and roll music playing, and the dogs capering around, and me sitting there in a corner typing away. And I wrote the book there, and it was good because I was in a nice family home and with people who know my work well and have been friends. And I'm a very friendly person. I'm not ceremonial. I'm not into the whole celebrity shtick at all. So I don't have a big car, no, nothing like that. So it was a good situation, and I'm back here now, and I'm in a little flat now. I'm not in anyone's home because you don't want to wear out your welcome.
You don't want to do that. What's it like? Let me ask you. What's it like when you get, as a writer, when you get in the zone, right? You don't have any blind, nothing is in your way, right? Nothing. All of a sudden, you can't stop, right? What's it like when you get in the zone?
Jimmy, it's wonderful. That is one of the reasons every writer writes, because you're doing it right all of a sudden, and this is what it's meant to be. And it starts to sing out of you, at least to me. And there's other times when you're struggling to make to hang two words together, but this was not like that.
You can't hang two words together. That's gotta be awful. But you came back, and you told me, you said, I finished the book.
Yeah.
And realistically speaking, this wasn't that long ago.
No,
this wasn't that long ago. And I asked you, I said, "Are you happy?" You said, "Jimmy, it came out of me. I got it done, and I'm very happy." And so, would you say that the time away from not only the issues of what was going on at your home, but also the other distractions of the United States and everything else, where you can just go and be Whitley, right?
Well, my life distractions. I mean, I have a lot of friends, and I'm always running around, and Anne used to call it toaster polishing. She, because I was doing anything but write, And she would say, Whitley, what are you doing? And I'd say, well, I'm fixing such and such. She said, Whitley, you're toaster polishing. Go back in your office and get to work. And so, but I can't do too much toaster polishing when there's no toasters. So I'm in good shape here. And but I had to get this book right, because it's all of my work is sort of somewhat under the radar right now, although this book appears to be breaking out, I must admit. And the thing is that it's if this ever coalesces to the point where someone is saying there is a connection between the stories of the various contact stories and the UFOs, UAPs, I guess we call them now, flying around in the sky, this book is going to become vitally important, because using the book, it's possible to understand something about this presence that is here. And, I don't divide it into different species from different planets and stuff, because I'm only going to talk about things I can prove, not about things I've heard or heard from some whistleblower or something like that. No way. I'm going to talk about things I personally know. And what I know is there is a presence here. It is very strange. It is very evolved. It is very subtle. And it appears to be having a great deal of trouble communicating with us coherently on one level. On another level, it is communicating with us and influencing us very profoundly and very directly. They don't talk. They do things by demonstration. And like what happened to me was a perfect example, and it mirrors all the conflicts, other conflicts. The military's had a lot of conflicts in this stuff, with this stuff. And the way these conflicts work are all the same. It is someone trying to demonstrate their displeasure at something, rather than to say, no, don't want you to do this. No, this is dangerous. No, we don't want this. They will demonstrate it by example. And that's why they don't go to Washington and Moscow and say, watch out for these nukes. You're going to get this is going to get out of hand. They go to the facilities and they demonstrate the dangers and their power by doing things like causing that facility in Russia to start to count down to a launch on its own, and causing facilities in this country to have their missiles retargeted. That's what they do. And in my life, that's exactly what they did. They demonstrated displeasure. They didn't say anything. They demonstrated displeasure. And is that because they can't say anything, or because we can't hear them?
I think it's because we can't hear them.
I agree with you. I think we can't hear them.
Yeah, we can't hear them. We can't. Whitley, let me lay something out and tie this into your experiences. We like to think today that we have a grip and that we're smart, and that and our knowledge goes from, like electrons and quarks, the very small, all the way to the edge of the universe and the very big, right? And then and we're trying to learn about everything in between. But to be perfectly frank, the most of everything that is in between, we know nothing about. Dark matter, dark energy, so much so that we just call it dark. We don't even know what it is. We can't measure. We can't do anything. And we think we know a lot, but actually we don't know much at all. They do. And if we've got 100 years of science behind us, right? Since Newton, to today, let's call it 300 years. But if you're dealing with a species that is 1 billion years advanced on physics than we are, then surely we don't understand and we can't hear them. That has to be the play here. And it would be by demonstration. We wouldn't be able to understand even if they did speak.
I think that's right. I think also that you reach a point, I would guess, in your development where you know essentially everything. And it may be that if you're not careful, you stumble into knowledge of the future as well.
Right.
So you know the future and the past.
Right.
And if that's true, then you are no longer alive because you can't have new experience. You're dead, but still moving. And that could be, I think, maybe one of the reasons they're here.
Yeah, that would suck,
Because
wouldn't it? That would kind of suck.
no, it'd be a nightmare.
It would be a
It
nightmare.
to be
Right.
trapped in a reality, never able to experience anything new.
Or
You
no
know,
surprises, no
Yeah.
wonder.
But you and I and all of us in this world and the way we are, everything is always new.
Fresh.
We for all we know, we could be riding a rail and going down a track that is absolutely never going to change. We're on our track. But that's not how we perceive it. We perceive it as new always. Every instant is new. And then it goes racing back into the past as becomes old and even as we're talking, it's happening right now. And, there was an article in the magazine Science in April of 1977, which I think is very important, by the two great uh, astrophysicists. I believe I forget exactly what their titles were. D.B.H. Kuiper, who I guess he was an astronomer, he discovered the Kuiper belt uh, of asteroids and of radiation, and Mark Morris, another great scientist, and they speculated in this article about whether or not someone who came here from another world would be secretive or not. And they concluded that they would be. And they would be because they would only be here for one reason, and that would be to experience our innovations, that what for us was new. They wouldn't be interested in our science, obviously, because our science would be child's play to them. And they wouldn't be interested in communicating with us because they probably would know how that would end. They've probably done that many times. But they would be interested in our self-discovery and our discovery of the world around us, in watching that. Therefore, they would hide and they would watch us, just like an anthropologist will, back when we had untouched tribes in the world, they would try to stay back so that the people wouldn't engage with them and so that they could observe what their real lives were like.
Sure. Well, like when you watch your grandchild learn to ride a bike, you're not discovering anything new. You already know how to ride a bike. But
Right.
you need to experience it right through your grandchild. And we're doing the same thing here as humans, aren't we? We're trying to discover exoplanets and more exoplanets. We're trying to figure out the alien life that's possibly out there. And we have tests and the James Webb Space Telescope. That's what we're doing. We want to go and see where everybody else is at. And that makes perfect sense to me, Whitley. Perfect sense.
Yeah, perfect sense. And we're the new kids on the block compared to them. And they are, and yet they've got a problem. And the problem is this: we are in danger from two directions, from nuking each other and from, I'm not going to call it climate change because that's such a loaded phrase, but from a change in the environment, which is in part induced probably by our activities and in part is part of nature. And I say that pretty certainly, because we live in a period, and we have for the past 2.8 million years, where there are long periods where the planet is encrusted in ice and short periods of interglacial, and we're at the end of an interglacial, and all these upheavals are starting again. So whatever happens over the next couple of hundred years, this is going to change a lot. And maybe it's going to be very destructive of us. And maybe during the context of that, with all the pressure we're under, there may be a nuclear exchange, just like this threatening now, frankly. And they may know that, and they may be thinking to themselves, how do we help them out of this pickle they're in without destroying our own reason for being here? Because the second we expose ourselves to them even a little bit, even basically for 5 minutes, their entire culture turns toward us. This is something called cultural colonization. And we're not interested in our innovations anymore. We want those flying saucers. We want that anti-gravity. We want that incredible metal that they have. We don't want all of this. We want their lifespans. We want their ability to communicate telepathically. We want all of their stuff. Our stuff doesn't matter anymore because it's stupid and childish. We want their stuff. This happened all around planet Earth as the Europeans, with their more impressive technology, went around the world and touched these other civilizations. The other civilizations felt disempowered, and they ceased to innovate on their own. And that's exactly what they are afraid of. And it is, I think, one of the reasons they hide, not the only reason, because there's some darker reasons for sure, but it is one of the main reasons they hide.
Why do we always want somebody else to fix our problems? Right? Why?
Because they seem unfixable. They seem unfixable. I was riding along in my car. I got a new Toyota a couple of years ago. It had 4,000 miles on it, and one of the tires disintegrated. And now, obviously Toyota wasn't putting the most fabulous tires on its new cars. I mean, if I build a beautiful car and then put cheap tires on it, but they do that. That's one of the worst habits of all the auto companies. Anyway, I could not figure out how to fix that thing. As it turned out, I didn't need to worry about it, because when the guy from AAA came and opened the trunk, it turned out it had no spare. The car was shipped with a little kit, with some junk in it that you stick in the tire to blow it up again.
Right.
When the tire is in pieces on the highway behind you, that is not going to be helpful.
No.
So that was complicated. But in any case, it was all somebody else. I couldn't fix any of that. I couldn't even change the tire at this point in my life. And if even I had a spare to change, I would have called AAA. And we're all like that. I have no idea how our computer works. None. And I know people who can explain very clearly why AI is not intelligent and how it works. But I'm not one of them. And you're not one of them.
No.
I mean, I look inside this computer and I have not the slightest idea how it works, what all the little doodads in it mean, or anything.
If a virus, I often wonder about this, but let's say a virus killed all of the software and industrial engineers in the world, right? And only people like you and I are left. Do you know how long it would be till we saw another cell phone? Dude, it would be like 10,000 years. It would be a long time.
We would be helpless. We would be completely helpless.
We'd be helpless. Did you? I don't know if you caught this news. I reported on this yesterday. Ford. Now, this goes along with Volvo and Volkswagen and a bunch of other car manufacturers around the world. What Ford announced yesterday, starting now on all of their vehicles, no more AM radio. Yeah. and the button is gone, right? No more AM radio. And I thought to myself, I mean, there's still a lot of AM radio in this country, but then I thought about coast to coast.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, how many people listen to Coast to Coast in their car?
A lot. Why the heck would they do that? I don't understand. What are they saving money by not having AM radio? There's just another idea of how are we going to annoy the customers and show our power over.
Right. And
let's take out something they like, even though it's probably more costly to take it out than to leave it in.
And the association, all the automakers that hang out with each other and discuss things, they said that, well, basically everybody's streaming anyway, and you're streaming with your phone and you're using Apple CarPlay and you're just plugging in. So we're just going to go with that. And it's like the future, but the first thing to go is the AM radio button is gone. It's crazy, isn't it?
It's bizarre. It's annoying. It's like this business of that most cars no longer have spare tires, which I found out the hard way.
A can of Fix-A-Flat. What is that going to do?
I mean, it's a can of Fix-A-Flat instead of a spare tire.
Oh,
and
man.
Come on. I mean, guys, this is so little. It's nasty. It's mean. It's little. And, they just seem to, I don't know. They can't help it. Because it's not just, it's dozens of different businesses and always nickeling and diming you to death. And, nowadays you get on an airplane and it's such a miserable experience. I like to travel, but I sure as hell don't like to fly.
Yeah, no, it's the worst. It's the
worst.
And here's talking. I'm going to swing this back to ET, but it's the same subject, and which is this: we have no more rabbit ears, right? There's no more everything is digital, everything is light piped, everything is optical, everything is in the ground, everything is a digital stream now. And in the case of anything going whack, we don't, it's like we won't have radio. You're not going to be able to turn on your TV if something goes crazy because the digital services are down. But it's also not broadcasting out to ET. They're not picking up on because everything is now in ground. Is that one of the reasons that you think that possibly we're not picking up a bunch of ET signals? Because
I think it probably is. First of all, the only signals that we've ever produced that would penetrate out into space beyond the atmosphere, television signals. Interestingly enough, the first thing we might find from ET would be fragments of a television show from another world. That would be fantastically cool, I have to tell you. But
the Outer Limits or something.
Right, exactly. Their version of the Outer Limits. But that was a short period in our life, in the history of the species. It's still going on, but it's vastly less than it used to be. And we had about 50 years when we were generating a lot of television signals, and so we've gone radio silent too. But the thing that worries me about this is the extraordinary vulnerability of the digital systems and that rely on satellite communications to solar activity. I wrote a book years ago, a short book called Solar Flares in 2009 that sold like 12 copies because it turned out nobody cared about solar flares. And they probably should, because there was an incident in 1858 known as the Carrington incident where a very heavy-duty solar flare hit the planet. And, they all only had telegraphs at the time. And all of a sudden, all the telegraphs started sparking and telegraph operators were thrown across the room, et cetera, and no one, of course, had any idea what was going on. If that happened today, it would wipe out a large number of satellites and a large number of systems on the ground, including in parts of the United States, especially major transformers upon which our whole power grid depends. And these huge transformers would take years to replace them, years without electricity.
And cars, your car wouldn't start.
Yeah, if your car had been parked outdoors, you'd be fried probably. So it would be a major catastrophe. And we don't think about it. We don't worry about it. And we should.
Well, you wrote Superstorm, and so you've thought about this stuff before. Do you think that our government is thinking about these things and are doing, doing something preventive to
No,
protect against?
nothing. I mean, look at the weather. The weather is, I mean, in the Day After Tomorrow, which is the movie based on Superstorm, there are tornadoes whirling around in Los Angeles, and there are tornadoes whirling around in Los Angeles now. Yeah, and people are laughing and say, "Oh God, a tornado in LA." And I think to myself, you forget Superstorm. We forget so quickly, and they used to call those storms superstorms, but now they call them bomb cyclones.
Mm-hmm.
And Superstorm, the book Superstorm, which is based on ideas that I got from the master of the key, from the book The Key, that strange individual who accosted me in my hotel room in 1998 and said so many prophetic things. It was just unbelievable, because most books of prophecy are full of crap. That one isn't. The stuff in it the predictions he made in it are almost 99% accurate. In fact, there's only one prediction that hasn't come true, and that is that there would be a type of computer that would be extremely high density intelligence, because it would be based on a gas. There would be a gas that could hold information. That hasn't happened yet, but the rest of it pretty much all has.
I have that gas. I had this shrimp salad for lunch, and but let me this is and we'll pick up when we come back after the break. Right now, where we have discussions about UFOs and contact and ET on both sides of the aisle, all across the country, inside of our community, outside of our community, Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C., the Department of Defense. We've got hearings, we've got reports, we've got committees, we've got task force. It's never been like this before. And I think there's two things that are going on. Either they're trying to get out in front of something, or they know something, some event that is about to happen. They're trying to get out in front of it. Or two, they know that something's about to leak, and they need to get out in front of that. That's what do you think the reasons are for all of this conversation that's been going on in the last few years?
Well, I think that there's an awful lot hidden behind the scenes. I think it's not as much as people believe, but largely because a lot of it has been destroyed or lost or offloaded to private industry and is no longer accessible through normal legal channels, and not accessible to Congress. But I think that what's happening is that there is so much under the surface here that it can't be contained. Well, like, how big is it? If you look at the Pentagon claims every year that they cannot audit something more than half of their assets, and there's this vast amount of money that is quote unquote missing. It's not missing. and they can audit their assets. That's the stuff that we're not supposed to know about. And that is huge. It's massive. It is whatever it is. It seems to me that we could be supporting breakaway civilization, just like Richard Dolan suggests, right here, right among us. And because it's huge amounts of money and material that's just off the books. So they know all of that. I remember back when Congressman Schiff, not the Schiff that we have today, but he was a Republican.
New Mexico? Yeah.
New Mexico Republican, yeah.
Right.
And he, one of the things he was elected to do was to find out the truth about the Roswell incident. And so he started working on it, asked the Department of Defense, it was like asking King Tut to answer a question or something. I mean, it's just not going to happen. A mere congressman, a freshman congressman, will get nothing out of the Department of Defense at all. I know that because I've known very powerful senators who couldn't get anything out of them either. So he didn't get anywhere there. And he started asking around, what should I do? And I came onto his radar. And I and others said, go to what was then called the General Accounting Office. And because the Defense Department has to answer their questions. They have to, legally. So he did. And the result was he was told that every record from Roswell from 1947 to 1952 had been destroyed.
Zero left.
Zero left. And when we try to look back into the past to find out what they knew and what happened, we're going to find more and more of that has happened. And we're also going to find what General Arthur Exon told me about. And he's the man he was commanding officer at Wright Pat at one point, and he was at the Air Materiel Command when the Roswell materials were brought in, when it was still Wright Field in 1947. And in 1988, he told me, he was a family friend, which is why he talked to me. He told me that he was still going to Wright to confer with the scientific team that was working on this so that because he had personal notes and memories of meetings that had been held years before where there had been no records kept. And these guys to this day, pencils up is the rule of the day. In other words, they've kept too many secrets too well. And the result is a lot has been lost to history. And it also means that each generation redoes what the last generation did without knowing it's already been done. That's bound to be the case.
But ultimately, though, it would also seem that with the Webb, James Webb, the space telescope, there's other telescopes as well. It's not just the James Webb, and we have the test system and stuff. That something is going to get discovered, and there is a large international community, Whitley, that is running stuff up in space and looking. And if the government doesn't come clean now and something else is discovered scientifically, kind of like the movie Contact, then you've got a real problem on your hands.
Well, they do have a problem on their hands, and I have a feeling that there's probably a lot of relationship and correspondence behind the scenes to perhaps even policies in place to control the dissemination of the discovery of an alien presence in the world, in the universe somewhere. In other words, if we discover signs of not only life but intelligent life, and so I think that's also a real possibility that we could that could be suppressed because of the fear that if it's not suppressed, the whole can of worms is going to end up getting opened.
The international community, I mean, I don't know. I just want your opinion on this before we go to the break. I don't know if the United States has that kind of influence on other state actors around the world. If somebody else wants this information to come out, I think it's going to happen. And the United States won't have a say in, like a discovery with the James Webb Space Telescope. That's an international coalition, right? That's got to be a concern. Or maybe they're hoping the James Webb will find it, so then they can talk about ET in a different way, and they don't.
Well, I think that
spill the beans.
I've always thought that one of the things that would be helpful is if we found ET, then we could begin a dialogue about ET and ease into the idea that ET has already found us. That could be very helpful culturally and socially. It could make it easier for us to handle this.
Let's continue all of this after the break. Whitley, stay right there. Our guest tonight is Whitley Strieber, and tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Accidental Truth. This is Ron James' new documentary. It is streaming. It's a big hit. It's streaming on all platforms. Go and check it out. Accidental Truth. This is required viewing by everybody in our community. Stay with us. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. We'll be right back. Join us November 10th, 11th, and 12th, 2023 as Disclosure Fest Foundation and Fade to Black Radio presents Stairway to the Stars, a Human Origins Science and Technology Expo, live at the Luxor Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip. With live talks, lectures, and workshops by world-acclaimed researchers and authors. This is Jimmy Church, by the way, and I'll be your host all weekend long, featuring topics like human origins, ancient technologies, indigenous teachings, workshops, a mass meditation, yoga and sound healing, music, and so much more. Don't miss our intimate sky watch and meteor shower over the infamous Area 51 airspace in Rachel, Nevada, with special surprise celebrity hosts guiding us through the night. Also introducing our Disclosure Fest VR Starship area with dozens of rides. You've got to check it out. This event will sell out. For more information and tickets, please visit disclosurefest.org. This is Jimmy Church, and I want to introduce you to LifeWaves X39 Stem Cell Activation Patch, which has totally transformed my health, my sleep, brain, and my eyes. I no longer need reading glasses. X39 is a true breakthrough in regenerative science. Using light, X39's patented age reversal technology is clinically proven to signal the activation of younger stem cells, accelerating the body's natural healing process. X39 promotes restoration and rejuvenation, bringing the life-changing benefits that I've experienced. By naturally elevating a master signaling peptide in the body, X39 boosts vitality, health, and wellness, and resets 4,000 genes to a younger, healthier state. It's one patch, once a day, and you can turn back time with X39. Just go to healingworksnow.com. That's works with an X. healingworksnow.com.
Hey everybody, it's Billy Carson, also known as Forbidden Knowledge. I want to talk to you about a very special event coming up July 30th, 2023, the Forbidden Conscious Awards. We're going to honor people who have been contributing to the conscious community for decades. People that you know and love that have helped you get to higher levels of thought and consciousness and awareness. It's going to be a live in-person event, but seats are going to sell out very fast. You want to make sure you're there in person, and guess what? You can help vote for the winners. Voting is available on forbiddenknowledge.com, and the categories are going to be social media influencer, podcast/radio host, TV host, actor, director, producer, entrepreneurs, health and wellness, philanthropists, authors, field researchers, archaeologists, space anomaly hunters, and of course, a Lifetime Achievement Award. I'll be your keynote speaker that night at the Forbidden Conscious Awards. We have celebrity guests performing. We'll have a halftime show where we're actually going to perform music for you. And don't forget about the pre-event mixer, where if you buy a box seat, you'll be in the VIP section, and you also have private access to a VIP mixer with celebrity guests. Shake hands, break bread, network, and then walk the red carpet with us and take amazing photos. It's going to be a night to remember. You don't want to forget this. Make sure you hurry up and get your tickets because they're selling out very fast. I want to see you there. Forbidden Conscious Awards 2023.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Whitley Strieber is with us. We're talking about his new book and other things tonight. It's number one right now. It is called Them, and you can go and pick it up right now from Amazon. Yeah, it's number one. And so let's get straight back to it, Whitley. And one of, okay, so we've had two hearings. One was UFO focused, the congressional, the representative version of it. We had the Gillibrand hearing, and that was aero budget focused, and with zero mention of ET or anything like that. But the one thing that I haven't heard much about are experiencers and those out there that have made direct contact. They just want to keep this military centric. Why do you think that is?
Because we're out of control of the whole experiencer phenomenon, and the military side of it suggests that the government may be able to do its job and protect the population. But that is an area. Well, Lou Elizondo, for example, will not communicate with me at all. Not at all. He won't talk to me. He won't email back anything. Chris Mellon, whom I know well, and not well, I mean, I know him. He's a great guy, by the way. Feels that he does not want to be on Dreamland because he does not want to make the link between the experiencer side of it and the more hardware-oriented side of it. And I can understand that. I can understand their unwillingness to do this. And I think that the reason I point out in the book is that, whatever's here has gone into the lives of people. And what have they done? They've taken sexual material, eggs and sperm. They took sperm from me right out of my body and did it brutally. I mean, I was raped. I was torn up inside my body. Women have their eggs and fetuses taken out of them. And you can't say with a straight face that, yes, we're your government, we are protecting you, we're doing our job, when this can happen in the middle of the night. And that they has let it happen for years and years and did nothing about it because they couldn't do anything about it. Or there's whispers always that there was some kind of agreement that the government would let it happen. And if that's true, and there's paperwork about that, my God.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a huge problem.
Major. Well, it's all a problem.
But here's another point, though. If they want to make it military, fine. They've got Rendlesham, where you've got Burroughs and Peniston that had direct contact, and there's a witness situation and a physical situation. We know what Burroughs went through, John Burroughs,
Yeah, sure.
and Peniston as well. And shouldn't they be called as contactee witnesses? It's military. There's plenty of paperwork.
But here's the problem. You open that any that door, even a crack, and the whole door comes flying off in your face. That's what their fear is. So I'm hoping that Jacques Vallée is right and that policymakers will read the book. I'm going to try to get it into the hands of some of them. And it's hard to get past their staffs, and the staff's people are going to take one look at that and just toss it over their shoulder. But if some people like Christian Gillibrand did read them, they would get an idea of how to do this correctly and usefully, because the book lays it right out. It's very clear. The first half of the book shows how communication and interactions actually work, that it's not the simple abduction scenario that's popularized in the media. There's a much more complex experience. And the second half of it shows both what happened in the early days and why it was that the visitors themselves, by what they did, placed the military in a position where they had to keep it secret. They had no choice. And I think that was done on purpose. It was deliberate. And it was to give the presence, which I sort of interchangeably use as the visitors, because I'm not sure it's just one species or what exactly it is, even if it's any species, to give them and make sure they always had the upper hand, and that they could carry out their activities in secret without the public resisting them. Because, if I had known that could happen to me, I would never have bought a country house. In fact, I would guess that second homes would be completely, that market would be totaled, because who would want to be out in the country under those circumstances? The national parks would be emptied. David Paulides would be a big hero instead of sort of considered a kook by most of the media.
But Gillibrand, that you bring up such an interesting point, because it seems that she slid in, and her staff, a direct reference to witnesses in contact with UAPs and health considerations. Now,
she did,
yeah, and you're only going to write that if you know something, or somebody is giving you the information to put in there that there is contact that is going on, and we need to take care of anybody that may have some issues, and that was in there. And
well, what they also ought to do is compensate the people who have been beat up by the intelligence community, from like a lot of people like me and some other people who have been out there in the public have been lied about and marginalized ruthlessly. And it's an intentional thing. It's not an accident. And it needs to be admitted that these people were telling the truth, and that they were buried in lies and false denials.
The other part with the language that Gillibrand had put into the budget, which is effectively law, right? That not only is this a concern, but this is a reality, right? This isn't Gene Roddenberry anymore.
Right, not by a long shot.
Yeah, not by a long shot. And I think that's where we are today. And it's not because of hearsay or circumstantial evidence. There is something much more real to the phenomenon going on that they are aware of. That's the correct way to look at it, right?
I would think so. Well, also, it's a good time because now we're looking back on the abduction phenomenon. It's not common now. I don't think it happens at all anymore, frankly. I think back in 1975, if you had come out with this, it would have been an immediate threat. But now it's more historical. And I think they can safely say that this was an episode in its past. And what they want to say about it, I don't know why it happened. I think I know why it happened. I think that someone was doing two things. I think they were making some kind of a record of us, and probably of everything on the planet, and a genetic record. And I think they were creating people that perhaps they were trying to create people who could interface with them. In other words, people who were a bridge between the two species. I think those things were done. And were they successful? They may have been. I have no idea. The one incident which I've mentioned on the show before, of the so-called cigarette smoking boy, is an example of someone who obviously did not work out. He was not successful. He was a terribly troubled and individual suffering greatly. And and not a day goes by that I don't think of him and the others like him who were perhaps made by people who were not humans, but beings who were willing to experiment with us in even more radical ways than we would experiment with animals. But I think that happened. And but it's all, as I say, now it's all in the past. We can look back on it. And maybe it's time to start to say to the public, yeah, we couldn't do anything about it, and we took some body blows here, but we survived. I think it's probably time to start saying things like that. And that's all I can say about it.
Yeah, sure. If we go, I think that we've been going through some phases, and ET, it doesn't matter. There's probably millions of advanced civilizations out there that are aware of planet Earth. They're checking out the entire Milky Way and the universe for life out there, just like we're doing the same thing here. But that being said, they are aware of where we are technically. So you didn't have to hide from electricity and radar and missiles and defense systems 1,000 years ago. You didn't even have to do that 150 years ago. The Wright brothers didn't show up on the scene until 1903, right?
Right.
Okay, so, but, and as radar and other things, sophistication started to come into play in the mid-1940s, tactics had to change. Today, I think it's more of an interdimensional. There's something else happening in the way that they approach this planet and people that is different from the past. Like you're saying, we can look back and look at the historical differences, right? And maybe that's why abductions aren't quite as frequent, or sightings or landings. Because the processes are different today. Would that be a good assessment?
It's also possible that the entities are different. Like, we used to have the Nordics here. I met some of them. I encountered some of them. I know other people in our area who don't want it known that they did, but the other people who did as well. And they were real. They were entirely real, physically real. Now they're gone. And what happened to them? Why did they leave? Did they think to themselves, this is just too boring? we don't want to fool with these cats. They're too dull, or they're too violent, or they're too scary, or whatever it was. But they're not here anymore. Or were they driven off by another species? Where the Greys say to them, "These people they're our problem, not yours. Get out." And they left. I don't know, but something caused that to happen. There's a whole level of this that we can't quite see, but we know is there. Like the time I encountered I don't know, I haven't mentioned this in a long time. I'll tell this story. I woke up one night in my apartment in New York with my head in the lap of a huge woman whose body towered up. I was on the couch in the living room. I wasn't in the bed or anything, and I was stunned. I mean, I started to jump up, and I found I couldn't move. And then I found them asking me inside my head what could they do to help me. This was right when the communion tour was starting. And so I blurted out, perhaps the stupidest thing that's ever been said to an alien. You could show me one of your children. And it was, what made it stupid was, here's these extraordinary beings are there, and they ask me what they can do to help me, not to inform me, but to help me. I could have said, you could give me a UFO. You could let me take pictures of you. I could have said all kinds of things like that. But instead, I blurted this out. And I said to Anne afterwards, I've never felt so stupid in my life. She said, no, Whitley, you're not stupid. You're the only person this has ever happened to. And this is the first thing. And at least you were able to say something. So time passes, a month or two. I'm in the old airport in Denver, Stapleton Airport. And I'm waiting for my ride. I'm doing my author tour. I'm touring around in Denver, and waiting for my ride. And all of a sudden, the following completely incredible and funny, wonderful thing happens. 3 people show up. A man, a human male, a normal-looking man, a gigantic child who's like a giant 6-year-old, has the features of, unformed features of a child, but he's nearly as tall as the guy. And what struck me as an obvious gray, wearing a cheap dress like from dollar store or somewhere, and covered with what I could only think was mortician's wax. This face just so poorly disguised. The whole thing was just absurd and amazing. And they've disguised themselves as golfers. They're carrying the cheapest, most anemic golf bags and golf clubs you've ever seen in your life. And they stop in front of me. And the woman and the boy start to play patty cake. And then they start to play patty cake faster and faster and faster until you can't even see their hands. You hear this going on, and a crowd gathers. People are watching this. They're stunned by this thing going on with the hands. And then they stop, and the boy sort of bops a couple times like he's, sort of still in the rhythm of it. And he turns around and walks toward the wall. And then you don't see him anymore. Then I turn around back, and the guy and the woman are also gone. And someone said to me, standing beside me, "Did you see that?" And I said, "I think I did." He said, "Let's go have a drink." And at that moment, my ride shows up. And I go out to the car, and we're driving out of the drive at Stapleton Airport. And I think, my God, they showed me one of their children. My God. And I've often wondered who the guy was who said, "Let's have a drink," and what would have happened if I'd had a drink with him.
Right.
Because he was not a tourist. He was something. He was something else. But what an experience! And what a story to tell. But it's not a story of, and yes, they gave me the flying saucer I asked for.
Right,
Yes, they
right,
took me.
right. But they did. Okay, so
But here's what I'm saying. That
go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
But this story had an ending. Did you feel the ending? Did you know that this was the ending, the answering of the question? Did you know all of this was? I like the mortician's wax comment. Did you see this coming?
No,
Right.
I didn't expect anything like this to happen. I didn't realize that they showed me one of their children until I was in the car leaving the airport.
Right.
But here's an interesting thing. There's supposed to be such a hostility between the Greys and these Nordics that we're told that that's the meme. But they were together. The woman was clearly a Grey. I mean, I could see it clearly, but probably most people couldn't see it because they didn't, they don't expect to see something like that. And if you learn as much about the brain as I have and how it processes perceptions, if you don't, if something comes into your view that you don't expect to see, you won't see it. Very usually won't see it. And so people didn't see her as what I saw, which was a damn Grey, very poorly disguised. They saw a woman.
Kind of like E.T. With Spielberg. Remember when E.T. was wearing the dress, right? Remember the E.T. put on the?
Oh yeah, I'm remembering it.
Yeah, in the movie. I wanted to ask you about this. So we have some pretty extraordinary things going on over the last 5 years. Obviously, Fravor and Dietrich and the Nimitz stuff and East Coast, West Coast, Pacific Navy and other stuff has revealed itself. And then 2 weeks ago, Whitley, like out of nowhere, as if the hearings weren't enough, in the Department of Defense and Susan Goff and whatever else you wanted to throw out there, we got cattle mutilations in Texas. Right? When that story broke, what went through your mind? It's just like, it's almost too much. Everything is just coming out at the same time. What'd you make of those cattle mutilations?
Well, I knowing Linda as long as I have, I know a fair amount about cattle mutilations. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not surprised. And I've never been particularly surprised by them. The reason being that whoever's here is exploiting the cattle in exactly the same way we do. In other words, they're using it for something. We use them for a food source. Maybe they use them for a food source too. And they have chosen to use the same animals we use in order not to alarm us, I would assume. And of course, it's not working very well. But and there's all of this stuff about it being a military operation and being a predator, and it's some of it's got to be predatory. But I don't think it's a military operation. I think it's them. And I'm amazed when people cling to these ideas that it must be the military. And if you've seen these things that I've never seen one, but that Linda has described, and that there are plenty of pictures of, not only in her books, but also in other areas, this is not predator action. And why in the world would the military do that? And how? Because a cow is a big thing, a big, heavy, unwilling creature.
2,000 pounds, man. 2,000 pounds.
Yes.
Man.
And I grew up in cattle country. I grew up with cattle. I've herded cattle. And it's not, there's no couple of goofs, PFCs are going to go out there with some kind of a stun gun and do this. It's just not going to happen. It takes some kind of ability that we don't have, frankly, to overpower an animal like that. And these carcasses are lying there with no blood in them and no blood on the ground. Come on. That's not why would the military want to take blood out of a cattle unless it's there's vampires creeping around in the military, but
but all of the hallmarks that Linda has brought to our attention over the years, all of it was in this press release. All of it.
yeah, I know all of it. I know.
Yeah. No footprints, no predators, no blood, surgical precision, anus removed, tongue surgically cut out. And this coming from, the ranchers and the sheriff's department, who must be very familiar with cattle and cattle country. And if they're going to say that this is a mutilation and this is why, that they know the difference between something that is natural and something that is not. And
Right.
and then they found a seventh one. So it was originally 6. And then they amended the press release and said that they found a 7th one along the same stretch of highway. But to have all of Linda's just right in a row, I thought that was pretty amazing.
I thought it was too. I thought to myself that these guys have been reading Linda's books or listening to her, because she's been talking about this since the 80s. The other thing is this: just as the cattle mutilation numbers have gone down, so have the numbers of abductions. And in other words, it's just as the number, I said that backwards, of abductions has gone down, so have the number of cattle mutilations gone down. And this is quite an unusual incident. But if you go back into the 70s, there was loads of them happening. And the reason is there's not as many ETs here as there used to be. Physical ones, I mean, I don't think.
Well, there was another comment at the end of the article where the sheriff's department said that they were alerting other agencies around the United States and internationally, because there are multiple incidents that are going on at the same time, and they wanted communication there. That was
I see. I did not know that. That's new.
The last line. That was the last part of the press release, and I thought to myself, what does that mean? Right? We have alerted multiple agencies and our international partners because
I should say.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Well, somebody's here stocking up their freezers for a journey somewhere else, probably.
But here's the thing with it. When I hear the skeptics or those out there that want to use cattle mutilations as an example of BS, tinfoil hat stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to UFOs, the one thing that I just go straight to, if you want an example, this is how science works. This is what we do. We are looking for new species. We're out trapping species. We're out every single day in the Amazon stealing moms away from their babies,
right?
And bringing them back.
And stealing babies away from their moms and not bringing them back.
100%. And that's what we do. Why would we think that ET would be any different? Or if we went to another planet and there was life on that planet, would we bring something back? Would we pick something up? I would think that we would, Whitley.
I think that, and I think it was in A New World, my previous book on this subject, where I outlined what we would do. And it's just exactly what's being done to us. And for the same reasons. We would not, it's not that we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't be able to know that they had a higher regard from themselves than they did for the other animals on their planet. It would be that they couldn't communicate with us well enough to do it any other way. And they would want sexual material. They might even want to create, we would want, sexual material for sure. We would want DNA. We might very well be able to want to to create versions of them in our own context to see if we could find some way of raising them so that they could communicate with us. Because the problem is going to be a huge one in terms of communication. And I point this out in them. If you think about communicating with dolphins, how hard that is. We have no idea what their songs mean or any of those cetaceans. We can barely communicate with apes, and only on our own terms, never on theirs. We can't communicate with our own dogs and cats on their terms. We have to teach them our ways. We have to teach them their names. We have to train them to do what we want them to do. But we can never understand the way they communicate with each other at all. Now, you add to that someone evolving in a completely different planetary environment with even maybe different minerals and a completely different system of perception, a different brain. The gap is going to be massive. And in fact, there's one letter in the book called Visitors in the Trees, where you can see them step by step trying to build a basis of communication with this witness. And it's remarkable, a remarkable thing. And their main issue there was trying to make sure that the witness did not forget what was happening or decide that it wasn't real. Because when we are exposed to something that is completely novel, the brain can't handle it. It does not handle it well at all. We will forget that or decide it wasn't real very quickly if we notice it at all. There's a video out on YouTube where you're asked to count the number of times some people are passing a basketball back and forth to each other. And you count the number of times, and then you find out that a gorilla walked across the stage while you were doing this, and you never saw the gorilla. Most people don't see the gorilla. I did not see the gorilla. But when I was pointed out to me, then the gorilla was there. These guys, the ETs are that gorilla, and we're not seeing them. And if we went to another world, they would be in the same position. We would probably be able to walk right down their streets and they wouldn't see us. It'd be amazing.
Would it be because, well, for a lot of different reasons, but one of them could be that we are not to them and them to us, that we are not in the same time frame.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Right.
Because the grays move like light. They move incredibly fast. I mean, I've seen them moving. I would not believe the accuracy and speed of seeing. There's very little talked about this because not many people have seen these things, but see them moving in a group. They move exactly like a school of fish. I mean, so fast and so quickly, and throwing off all kinds of mental things that make you think it's a pack of dogs, a pack of this, a pack of that. You have to be pretty practiced to know and to stay with the business at hand. That what is happening here is these are not dogs, and these little creatures are grays. We don't have anything like that in our experience. Our minds don't work that way. Our perceptual systems don't work that way. We can't do that.
Are they skipping frames? Right? Are they just in they're so
fast? They're so fast you can't tell. They're almost unbelievably fast. You know what they're like? And this is something I've thought they might be. They are as accurate and as fast as machines. As machines, Jimmy. As accurate and as fast as machines.
And what does that suggest? I mean, that would say to me, look, Whitley, I could turn this into too long of a statement, but if I were the head of a Silicon Valley corporation, Google, for instance, I would be very interested in immortality. And you would achieve that by getting this into a robot. No food, no disease, no sleep, no issues, right? And this could be exactly what you're talking about there.
But there's another no there. No reason to live.
We're right back to that, aren't we?
Yeah.
But we could fly for 10,000 years in a flying saucer to another world without considerations of oxygen or food or sleep, and
exactly
it takes all of that out of the play, which is what the Greys would represent, I would think, right?
But you can't do that and be alive. In my book, my novel, The Greys, I suggest that they lost their soul to the machine. They became, over time, they replaced so much of their biology that they ceased to be biological creatures and became machines.
Right.
And now they're looking for a heart. They're like the Tin Man in Wizard of Oz in real life, because they're no longer alive. They only have a memory of life, because a machine is never going to be alive. And it's never going to be alive because it cannot die. If you can't die, you can't live.
I've often said that if I won the lottery, I would go back to school. That's what I would do. I wouldn't, I might vacation a little bit, but I would go and learn for the rest of my time, right? I would just go and learn. And if that went on forever, okay, all right, back to your point. What if that happened forever? How smart do you get? How much knowledge do you possess if you spend 1,000,000 years learning?
You end up in a situation where the universe seems no bigger than something lying in the palm of your hand.
It's boring.
And exactly.
Yes.
The agony of being alive and dead at the same time. That's what happens when you know everything.
Is it now? Okay, so let's back up a step. And I know that you've written about this and we've talked about this somewhat, but let's talk about it now. Is this the intelligent design that has been referenced? Is this the creator? Is this what is out there spitting out like Merlin universes, and creating DNA? Is that what we're ultimately talking about?
Well, if that's true, then there's something out there running from its own immortality and throwing off all kinds of universes and experiences and everything it can to find some way to bear its eternal and unending consciousness. And that could be true. There's another, we're coming toward the end of our time here, and I want to talk about a little bit about the second part of my book, the
Sure.
military part, and a part about the brain. We've talked about the brain a little bit, but what I did with it was I went back to the beginning, which it really begins in 1946, not in 1947, or possibly in 1945, because I think Jacques Vallée and Paola Harris nailed it with Trinity. about that event. But in 1946, at White Sands, they were firing off German-made missiles and experimenting with them, because they had captured them after the war, and they kept some of them would get shot down, and funny things happened to them. And I don't have any behind-the-scenes hidden information except things that have happened to me personally that would probably be classified if they'd happened to somebody behind the scenes, but I'm not behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did was I went to the old newspapers and the news stories, and because this stuff wasn't secret then, it wasn't being kept secret. They were just confused by what was happening, and I found that there had been a lot of activity, and I think that the military began to shoot back, and that's possibly why Roswell happened. And then there's the another incident that happened in the context of the 1952, July 1952 Washington flyovers. That was an incident where something came out of the Pacific, out of the Atlantic military area on fire. Was absolutely not a meteor. It was moving much too slowly, and it was on a very flat trajectory, and crashed in West Virginia. And people saw something. They saw what was probably an escape capsule of whoever had been in the thing, moving around in the woods, and all of this happened, and the military was fighting them, and initially being effective in that they were successfully shooting them down. They can't do that anymore, but they were then. And so I got into all of that, and I thought to myself, okay, let's keep doing this. What about the secrecy? And so I looked up, not trying to parse it all out. What I did was I went into the scientific papers that people like Hal Puthoff have published, and I've found they've published a lot of papers, and you can find in their published work an intense interest in things like how gravity functions, and how things like high energy beams based on lasers would work, and so forth. And I'm quite sure that all of that material is classified. That's the secret. That's what they're working on, because what I found was a consistent effort to do two things. One is to understand gravity, and the second one is to make a weapon that was a high-powered weapon that was also basically a beam of energy, which would, of course, move much, much faster than any missile ever could.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the two things that they were doing, and probably still are doing. I don't know if Hal is, but I'm sure those two things are the main things that are being worked on behind the scenes. And all I did to find this out was just to read the published materials. I didn't need to be, and of course there was some material I found also about the number of pilots that have suffered from this, and how Havana syndrome is related to the brain damage that those pilots have experienced. So, and I thought to myself, I know that these beings have a habit of trying to divide people and to come between people and to cause division and that kind of thing, because I've had that in my own life. And I thought to myself, what if they are the origin of Havana syndrome, and they are trying to use it to cause ruptures in our society? And why would they do that?
Yeah, why?
Well, the answer is very clear, and it goes back to what uh, Phil Corso said so many years ago that he was told by one of them that what was on offer to us was a new world if you can take it. If you can take it is the operative thing here. And this is, we're coming up toward the end of our time together. And the great message of this book is we have to be strong. We have to keep our wits about us and not lose sight of what we are looking for, which are two things. One is understanding this and a clear relationship with it. And two is the ability to use what we learn for our own purposes, because whoever is here can move around this universe in ways that we need to learn and fast. There's no reason that mankind has to sit here on this planet and watch the parade go by. We can join that parade. We can do it. And all we need is to be able to take it. That means to take the grief, and it means to wrest the knowledge out of their hands. It means to be strong. That's what they're looking for. And that's why all this crap goes down, to push us around and to see if we are strong enough to prevail on our own in this big, complicated, and probably very dangerous universe.
Well, isn't that the only way to develop the mindset of, if you want to change the world, if you want things to change, then you have to be that change, right?
Exactly.
Right.
It's the oldest thing in the book. Sink or swim.
Right.
You know, exactly. Child thrown into the water, and this parent says sink or swim, and the child is going to swim or not.
And I just wanted to ask you this for those out there: why should they read them? I mean, what can they expect out of it?
Well, what they can expect out of it is it's the only analysis of the relationship with the visitors that's ever been written. Certainly outside of the secret world, and probably inside it too, would be my guess. The only one. There's never been another. And it is accurate in that it does analyze the relationship in the first half of the book between the close encounter witnesses and the visitors in all of its wonder and glory and danger, and that never been done. I take 11 letters. They are not, one or two of them are about abductions, but they are about a whole different kind of relationship that is huge, that is extremely complex and varied, and that is totally under the radar. Under the radar. Nobody talks about this stuff. And then the second half of the book, I go into how the brain works, why we have had so much trouble understanding this, what the military has done and right and what it has done wrong, and how it is that it wasn't a decision on our part to keep all of this secret. We were maneuvered into that by the visitors and exactly how they did it. And it gives government a chance to say, yes, we were maneuvered into it, but now that's over. And it's time for us to come clean, for the public to begin to think about this, and above all, for our trained scientists and academics to really think about this, because they never have, Jimmy. The great I wish to God that Stephen Hawking had had a chance to think more about this than he did. It's just a few scary pronouncements. That's not enough for a mind like his. And the academic community, no one has ever really seriously gone into just how our mythology and the mythologies of the world work with this, because we always stop too short and we assume that all of these stories of the gods, the demons, the angels, etc., are basically in the head. They're imaginary. But what if they're not?
That's right.
And if E.T. is here and has been here a long time, then probably they aren't. And recently there was discovered that 5 million years ago, there was an extraordinary and unaccountable change in the way the human genome is put together. Did somebody do that? If we weren't constantly bending over backwards to say, yes, anything but ET,
Yeah,
we
right,
might make
right.
we might make some serious progress.
You know, I was talking to. Well, I've done this a few times, Whitley. I'm glad you brought this up. But I'm speaking to a PhD anthropologist, right? Okay, somebody that just knows everything about everything, right? Allegedly. And so I go, well, how do you explain 200,000 years ago that Homo sapien just appeared? And how do you explain 46 chromosome pairs instead of 48? And this was the answer, Whitley. You don't understand. Nature just does stuff. What? That's what that's your answer? That's your answer that they don't have an answer.
Yeah, because what he really was saying is, you do understand. We don't have an answer.
We don't have an answer. I just love it's just great, but they won't go anywhere outside of the box. You're right.
Because they live in the box, and if he went outside the box on your show, it could ruin his career, and that has to end. We have to. Jeff Kripal, my dear friend and co-author of Supernatural, published a terrific book called Superhumanities that lays out all of the things about the human species that the academic community will not acknowledge, and points out that these people, like one of the great darlings of academia, Jacques Derrida, he was telepathic, but they never mention that. That's gone. Because it doesn't fit the mold.
It doesn't fit. They don't know. If they can't measure it, right? If they can't observe, they can't put that in the laboratory. That is not part of the conversation.
Right. And they want to believe that we are small enough to understand. I think we are way too big to understand. There's 100 trillion synapses in here. That's half the number of stars in the entire universe, right here. This thing is a few 100,000 years old, and believe you me, we have not opened all those doors yet. No way. No way. And E.T., if E.T. is here, knows that, and that's probably why they're here, because they found that interesting. And never think for a moment that we're not as intelligent as they are. We don't have as much experience, clearly, but intelligence, I'm not sure that we aren't the leading, we aren't the head kid on the block. And when it comes to intelligence, we are certainly highly intelligent.
Yeah, it's all DNA. DNA is universal. I think that the capacity of understanding gets bigger for us every single day, and we'll eventually get there. But we have the machine to do it. Right?
We sure do. We sure do. And
Whitley, I miss you already, man. Hurry up and come home. All right.
I'm coming home soon. I'll be home soon.
And dinner at my place. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, Jimmy.
It's
a good one.
I'll talk to you soon, Whitley.
See you soon. Bye now.
Thank you so much, Whitley. The new book is called Them. It is #1 right now on Amazon. You can go and get it now. It's an incredible read. Whitley Strieber, thank you so much, my friend. You're the absolute very best. And so there you go. And tomorrow, I'll just let everybody know, tomorrow in the middle of the day, I will be doing a live stream with the CEO of LifeWave X39. That's going to go on tomorrow. And I will get everything up for the community for you to come and join us. It's going to be very, very interesting and fun. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. That was a great conversation with Whitley Strieber. He is the absolute best. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJ Sierra, the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow, I want you to be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.